Okay, now we'll start. See, last time in last class, what we have done is we have discussed the basic tenets of existentialism. And in that class, I told that there are 9 subtopics uh, on which repeated questions have been asked in previous years. So those 9 topics now we will take up one by one, subtopics actually of existentialism. Maybe 4, 5 I will be able to take in this class, and 4, 5 balance will be taken next class. So now let us see what those topics are, because uh, I mean already we have understood the basic tenets. So now it's easy to understand those topics, details of those topics. We will also try to understand the critical evaluation pertaining to those topics, and then we'll try to see how we can conclude also. See, the first subtopic which we identified in last class was concept of Dasein in metaphysics. Now, this question has been asked. So, not what we'll be doing is uh, the how this concept is relevant to metaphysics. You may be knowing already metaphysics and epistemology in philosophy. Metaphysics is basically theory of reality, where we discuss the reality of self, this word, and God, etc. So, uh, and this concept has been given by one of the important existentialist philosophers, Martin Heidegger, who was a German philosopher. So, now let us try to understand what is the concept and how it is utilized in metaphysics, in existential metaphysics. See, this is a German term, which means this we discussed uh, last time also. So this is a German term which means uh, being there or human existence. And as I told, this is in the philosophy of Martin Heidegger, uh, in his book called Being and Time. This is his book, which he has. I mean, he is a modern philosopher, a 20th century philosopher. This book he has written in 1927. So this refers to human way of being. So literal meaning is being there or human existence, and it actually refers to human way of being, because human alone can ask the question, what does it mean to be, and why we are here in this world. So basically, uh, a human being, the meaning of life, the meaning of being in this world, all this is concerned with this concept. So thus for Heidegger, metaphysics, in fact, as you know, existentialists, they emphasize on existence rather than essence, against opposed to idealist philosophers or earlier philosophers, basically. So this also focuses on human existence. Now, this concept we'll try to understand in a few points. So, first important point is, let us try to understand why this is very, very central to metaphysics. And then we will also try to understand what are its various aspects of its meaning. Now, this uh, this is important for metaphysics because, as I told, traditional metaphysics uh, focuses on essence, uh, treats objects, humans, as objects with fixed properties. Whether you see the metaphysics of Greek metaphysics or even rationalist, empiricist, etc., they treat human objects with fixed properties. But Heidegger rejects this, and so other existential philosophers also. So he says that it's not a thing, but a possibility, an openness to the word, and a being that must become what it is. So therefore, how humans exist is basically this concept. The study of how humans exist is included in this concept. And various aspects of its meaning. First is being in the word. So what he says, Dasein is always being in the word. And in German, in der Welt sein. This is German terminology. So actually, see, I keep on telling to the students, uh, if you deal with Western philosophy, there may be some original German terms, Greek terms, or English terms. And similarly, when you deal with Indian philosophy, there may be some uh, Sanskrit terms also, or Sanskrit phrases, sloks, etc. So if you remember, if you can remember those and can quote in your answers, maybe it may be difficult to remember, but still if you try, definitely you can quote at least some. So that will upgrade the quality of the answer. So here, in existential philosophy, Martin Heidegger is a German philosopher. Similarly, other philosophers are also, they have given important quotes, so that if you remember, you should quote it in your answers. Now, what being in this world means? This means humans are not detached spectators. They are involved in various relationships, language, tools, work, and society. Basically, they live a life here. So it's not that they are simply detached spectators in this world. Now, so therefore, uh, for human beings, this world is not an object out there. This term which they have given, it is a context of meaning, because humans have to live and enhance the meaning of their life, and define their meaning, in which Dasein is embedded. So metaphysics therefore becomes a study of lived experience. See, the important words and phrases I have made bold. So when you write answers, whether in practice or in actual exam, please do underline those important words and phrases, because they are quite significant for your answers. Unless the examiner is able to catch that whether you have written those words and phrases, you may not get good marks. So accordingly, the Dasein means lived experience of human beings. Now, another aspect of this word is thrownness and possibility. So Heidegger says, Dasein is thrown. We do not choose. Thrown means we are thrown in this world. We are thrown in some family. We are thrown in some reason. So what he says, we do not choose our birth, family, culture, or historical period. So this is thrownness. But there is a possibility also along with this. What is that? There are certain limits which we cannot choose, but we must choose our life projects. So once we are at some place, in some family, in some region, in some country, we are free to choose our life projects, and that we should choose. That's what existential philosophy is. You have to live your life well. So this tension between thrownness and possibility makes human existence dynamic, uncertain, and as well as creative also. Now, another aspect of its meaning is care, the structure of existence. So what he says, the basic structure of Dasein is care. So human beings, while living in this world, they always care about their goals, their failures, their relationships, and also future possibilities. So therefore, care or Sorge explains why this word matters to us. We interpret things in terms of significance, and our actions have meaning. Another aspect of this word is temporality and being toward death. Dasein is essentially temporal. What does it mean? It concerns with past, it concerns with present, it concerns with future, because it's related. Temporal means it's related to time frame. So past means past influences us, because that is thrownness, because you are thrown somewhere, some area, some family, some religion. Present concerns absorbs us, and future possibility opens choices. Another important thing in this whole process is past, present, and future is death, awareness of death. Because every human being is, while living his life, is aware of death, exposes the finiteness of all our projects, and produces angst, anxiety, a deep existential anxiety. Angst is, what is angst? A deep existential anxiety. This reveals that no external authority can define our life for us. We only ourselves have to define. I mean, that is what existential philosophy also. Human being itself is most important. They have to define their own life. They have to make their own choices. They have to lead their own life. And accordingly, they have to give the meaning to their life. Another aspect is authenticity versus inauthenticity. What is authenticity? If we own our own choices, because every human being has choice. So owning our choices, accepting responsibility, living consciously is authenticity. What is inauthenticity? Reverse of this. Conforming to what society is saying, what others are saying, and avoiding one's own decision, which loses individuality also. So this is inauthentic life as far as Heidegger is concerned. So Heidegger says both models, I mean, authentic as well as inauthentic, because some individuals may live authentic life, some human beings may live inauthentic life. So both are possibilities in this world. That's what existential philosophers and Heidegger as well says. So this is basically concept of Dasein in Heidegger's philosophy. Now, what are its critical parameters or critical views given by some other philosophers, how they have criticized, how they have found this deficient philosophy. Now, Adorno, one of the contemporary philosophers, of course, because existentialism itself is a contemporary philosophy of 20th century. So accordingly, the criticism also is subsequent to that. So this is also modern, almost all modern philosophers will be there here. And this usually is a relatively difficult and unknown chapter in Western philosophy, because usually traditional philosophy, as I have already earlier also told, Greek philosophy or rationalism, empiricism, Kant, Hegel, etc. Usually everybody is little familiar. But these philosophers, existentialism, logical positivism, atomism, all these theories, or even Wittgenstein theory. So this is the little unknown kind of theories. So those anyway, I'm going to take up one by one. So now we are discussing existentialism here. So what Adorno says, he criticizes Heidegger for ignoring concrete social and economic structures. And he criticizes for making Dasein too individualistic. Similarly, Rorty, another philosopher, argues that Heidegger's language becomes mystical and unclear, weakening the metaphysical claims. Then there are some phenomenologists and philosophers. I mean, for example, Merleau-Ponty said Heidegger underplays the role of the body and intersubjectivity. Similarly, some other critics note that Heidegger is deeply, but never fully explains what being itself means, leaving the metaphysical project incomplete. So some philosophers, they also say that Heidegger's philosophy is incomplete also, because his metaphysical hypothesis is not very complete. So this is first subtopic or sub-concept of existentialism, which we are taking today. Now we'll go to second. Now second is Kierkegaard's concept of choices. Now, Kierkegaard is also called father of existentialism. This is an earlier class also we know, because he is basically, other philosophers are 20th century, but he is a 19th century philosopher. So he is called father of existentialism. And his philosophy is centers on individual freedom. I mean, not only his, in fact, all existentialist philosophers' philosophy centers on this individual freedom, inwardness, and personal choice. And his philosophy came as a rejection to Hegel's philosophy, Hegel's idealism, of absolute idealism, you may be knowing, and also Kant's abstract moral universalism. So basically, it was a reaction to Hegel and Kant. So his philosophy teaches a person how to exist, not merely how to think. Because other philosophers, uh, previous philosophers, they have given how a human being thinks. But existentialist philosophers, including Kierkegaard, he says how to exist. I mean, basically, he explains how to exist, how a human being should exist. So for Kierkegaard, truth is subjectivity. This is again another important concept he has given. The most important truth, which means morality and faith, cannot be proven by logic and science. So his philosophy is subjective philosophy. It's not objective or something you can prove through experiments or through logic, uh, either a priori or a posteriori. All these things you cannot prove here. So one has to live basically, and one has to live inwardly through personal commitment. So this is what his philosophy. And then choice becomes the defining nature of human existence. Because once you start focusing on personal life of an individual or a human being, then what choices he takes, that becomes a defining nature of his individual's existence. Now, let us try to understand in a little detail the concept of choices. Kierkegaard says there are 3 stages of life. And accordingly, he has divided the structure of his choices or theory of choice. He says, I mean, his book is Either Or, is the name of his book. Kierkegaard explains basically that life presents us with fundamental choices. These choices form our selfhood. This earlier also be understood. Now, what are different stages of life? 3 stages. First is aesthetic stage. Now, this stage he defines as life of pleasure, entertainment, novelty. Leads to boredom. He says that this kind of aesthetic stage leads to boredom, despair, and a sense of emptiness. So beyond the limit, you are engaging yourself in pleasure or entertainment or novelty, etc. You start getting bored, you start getting despair, and you are dissatisfied basically with your this thing. Second is ethical stage. This is, according to him, is life of duty, responsibility, and moral seriousness. And it's higher than, basically, see, all 3 stages which are explained by Kierkegaard, is one stage is above in quality over the other one. So aesthetic stage comes at the least level, lowest level. Better than this is ethical stage. Third is religious stage, according to him. This is, according to him, is highest stage, and it involves a leap of faith, a personal commitment to God beyond rational evidence. It requires courage and acceptance of doubt also. So through these choices, a person creates himself. And according to him, if somebody reaches to religious stage along with his choices or as per his choices, he attains a very good quality of life. That also requires, but that kind of choice also requires courage, inwardness, and acceptance of doubt also. Now, Kierkegaard, like other existentialists, they deny that human beings have a fixed essence and they cannot. His thing is, no, the self is a task. You have to make it. So every individual self is made by its own choices. So even though society influences, but our own choices make us more than any other influence. And therefore, every individual has to bear full responsibility of their choices. Now, let us try to understand in brief meaning of choice in Kierkegaard. So choice, as I mean, already you might have understood, is not merely selecting between options. It is a commitment of the whole self, because aesthetic stage, then religious stage, and then ethical stage. So all these stages involve living the life fully, basically in that mode. So it's not that you are just choosing it, but you are committing your whole life for that. So in choosing, the individual becomes what he chooses, actually lives that life. So choice basically awakens anxiety because it reveals freedom and responsibility also. Because see, last class also we understood that every individual has choice, but along with choice comes responsibility. And along with responsibility also comes anxiety. So all this is basically cause and effect of each other. And this Kierkegaard's this idea actually inspired other existentialist philosopher, because he is anyway rightly called father of existentialism. So whether it is Sartre, whether it is Heidegger, whether it is Jaspers or Marshalls, etc., all these guys were influenced by Kierkegaard's philosophy. Now let us try to understand what are the critical comments on this philosophy of choice or of Kierkegaard. Now, definitely it has some positive points. So let us first discuss about positive points. It highlights authenticity, individuality, and moral responsibility also. That if whatever you choose, you are responsible for that. You cannot always throw burden on the society. That's I'm being influenced by society. No, you have within a limited option. Still, you have option to choose. It shows the psychological depth of decision making and faith. It corrects over intellectualism of Hegelian philosophy. So all these are, if you see, are positive points. But again, there are a few negative points also. The modern philosopher critique Adorno, he argues that Kierkegaard makes ethics too subjective. Because in Kierkegaard's ethics, there is no usually objectivity or universalism is not there. And this is actually criticism of almost all existentialist philosophers. So, I mean, ethics is too subjective where social and historical conditions are neglected. Then some other critics claim that emphasis on inwardness may lead to isolation or moral relativism. This is almost in same thing because there are moral universalism means there are some values which are universal. Moral relativism means no, every individual or every group may have its own moral values. So that's what it leads to. Then some other critics say that leap of faith is irrational and could justify extreme religious behavior. This is again another criticism. Now we'll go to third subtopic. This is again very, very important. And let me tell you, Sartre is one of the most important philosophers of existentialism. In fact, three philosophers only we have to study: Sartre, Heidegger, and Kierkegaard. So out of this also, Sartre is very, very important, and almost every individual, whether he's a student of philosophy or even non-students, have definitely heard his name and heard his philosophy in some or the other way. Now, he's a 20th century philosopher, and he was influenced by, of course, Kierkegaard, Heidegger also. Then also he was influenced by Nietzsche and Husserl of phenomenology also. All these influences have, I mean, basically are visible on Sartre, and the distinction which he makes, being in itself and being for itself. The book is Being and Nothingness, in which he has distinguished this. So he written in 1943. Now, not only for him, but for whole existentialist philosophy, this distinction, being for itself and being itself, is a very, very significant and core, fundamental aspect of existential philosophy. Now, let us try to understand what is being for itself and what is being in itself. Now, being in itself refers to mode of existence of non-conscious objects. For example, a table. It's already there. So you will see the example. For example, complete, solid, self-identical, without consciousness or self-reflection, passive, fixed, and without possibilities. Simply, it is there. For example, stone, chair, table, tree, mountain. So all these he classifies in being in itself. Being in itself cannot examine itself or change what it is. So what Sartre calls opaque being. What is being for itself? Opposed to this, being in itself, as you know, almost non-living things will come in being itself. Non-living means non-human things, being for itself. This is the mode of being of human consciousness. This is being for itself. Now, what is that? It is open, unfinished, and constantly becoming, changing. It's defined by freedom and choice. It's able to question, reflect, and negate. It's aware of itself and of the world. So all these things are, in a way, characteristics of human beings, basically. So this is being for itself. And here, consciousness contains nothingness also. A gap that allows us to imagine alternatives, refuse what we are, and project new possibilities. And in the sentence or statement of Sartre, which has come in a few years, some question paper, definitely it has come, that man is not what he is and is what he is not. This line he has given, important. So this means humans have no fixed essence. They continually create themselves through their choices. They have to live their life. Now, the third concept is there. Being in itself, being for itself, and being for others is also another concept given by Sartre. This has been inspired by Hegel's master-slave dialectic, but that we should understand, even though questions have been asked for other two concepts, but third also, if you mention by the way, in your critical comments or in your last paragraph, you will perhaps get better marks. So, being for others. What is that? When another person looks at me, I experience myself as an object in their world. This produces a shame, self-awareness, and struggle for recognition. So human relationships becomes fragile, conflict-ridden because two freedoms confront each other. So basically, even in any human society, humans are, confronting with each other. So that becomes being for others. Now, one very important illustration in his book he has given, illustration of waiter in a hotel. What he has said, in cafe, waiter behaves as if he is essentially a waiter, rigid, mechanical, over polite. But humans for themselves are not fixed things to treat oneself like an object. For him, if any human being is treating himself just like an object, it's a bad faith. He give a term bad faith or self-deception. Now, let us try to understand what are the various critical views on this Sartre's view. Marlowe and Ponty argues Sartre ignores the body and the lived world. Consciousness is not as detached as he claims. This is one criticism. Again, another critic, Adorno, criticizes Sartre's dualism as overly individualistic and abstract. So this is his criticism. Then some other thinkers say Sartre has exaggerated freedom, overlooking social, cultural, and economic conditions that shape choices. Basically, this criticism is almost for every existentialist philosopher, because they exaggerate individualism, they exaggerate freedom, they overlook social, cultural, and economic conditions which affect any individual. But then there are some positive things also, because Sartre is widely admired for offering a powerful explanation of human freedom, responsibility, and self-creation. So this is again very, very positive thing of existentialist philosophy, because in existentialist philosophy, if you see, individual becomes central object. Just like in idealism or rationalism or earlier philosophers, individual is not a central person around which philosophy revolves. But for existentialism, it is. Every existence of individual is central theme. around which whole philosophy revolves. I will go to fourth subtopic, I will say, of existentialism, which has been asked in earlier years. Now, this is a statement from Soren Kierkegaard. Uh, he says that the function of prayers is not to influence God, but rather to change the nature of one who prays. This is a statement from Kierkegaard, who is also known as father of existentialism. Uh, so now this discuss or explain or critically discuss or critically examine this statement, like that questions have come. Now let us try to understand that. This Soren Kierkegaard regarding I have already discussed in earlier, so I'm not going to that. Now, what is meaning of this statement? See, Kierkegaard says that the purpose of prayer is not to persuade God or to change external events, because usually, I mean, as you know, Kierkegaard was one of the existentialists who was a theistic. He believed in God. But then Sartre, another existentialist, he didn't believe in God. So in existentialism, earlier we have in last class we have seen there were branches: theistic, atheistic. So it's not, I mean, basically anyway focus is human individual, existence of human individual or human being. So here God is anyway not very central. But what he says, the purpose of prayer is to persuade, not to persuade God to change external events. God is eternal, unchanging, and not subject to human persuasion. Prayer transforms, instead, prayer transforms the self, the attitude, character, humility, and relationship with God. So this is what his statement and it means. If somebody is praying, it's not that God is going to, listen or going to change or going to influence, but it influences or changes self himself. Attitude changes, character changes, humility comes in. So thus prayer deepens self-reflection and inwardness, cultivates humility and moral awareness, aligns the individual with God's will, and builds courage to live with uncertainty and still choose faith. So for Kierkegaard, prayer is a spiritual discipline through which a person is reshaped. So it's not influencing God, it's influencing the person himself, not a mechanism to influence divine intervention. Now, as we have seen earlier also, he has given the concept of leap of faith. So how it is linked with that? For Kierkegaard, genuine faith always includes doubt. If religious truth could be proved objectively, it would no longer be faith. So Kierkegaard always believed that logic, reason is not helpful here. It's always faith which is most important for an individual life or for a human being. So what he says, prayer is standing before God without certainty. It is a subjective commitment, not an intellectual conclusion. And choosing faith despite uncertainty is leap of faith. So this is what his concept. Earlier also in earlier topic we have seen that prayer strengthens the individual to make this leap of faith. Now, what are the prayer versus institutional religion? Kierkegaard criticizes formalistic religion and empty rituals because he doesn't believe in that. Churches, doctrines, and philosophical systems cannot replace individual personal relations. So for him, individual's personal relationship with God, personal prayer is more important. And he claimed that subjectivity is truth. So organized religion or organized prayer or rituals are not going to help. So prayer for him is an inward existential act of self-transformation. And an example he has given in his book, a person who prays for patience does not magically receive patience from God. The sincerity of prayer itself helps cultivate patience within the self. So he gains a lot. I mean, a person who is praying, definitely he will gain something. But it's not from God. It's from his own discipline, his own patience. Now, this idea also has been critically examined. It has been criticized by so many critics and philosophers. One important critical thinker, Emmanuel Levinas, he says Kierkegaard's elevation of religious faith above ethics, arguing it risks justifying morally dangerous actions. Because if he says that it's above ethics, his prayer or religious faith is above ethics, it means it's not morally correct. Adorno, another critic we have seen in other, because he in general he is a critic and he has evaluated existentialism, so his name will repeatedly come. Adorno accuses him of excessive inwardness and ignoring social reality. This is a criticism from for all existence philosophers. Sartre and Heidegger, these two philosophers, though they appreciate his insights on anxiety and authenticity, but reject his theological foundations. Why? Because, as I told, Sartre was himself atheistic. He didn't believe in God. He didn't believe in prayer. Some theologians also argue that reducing prayer to self transformation underplays divine agency, because most of the theologians are theistic. So if you because see, if you see, Kierkegaard is somewhere between total theism and atheism. So he says that you will not gain anything from God, but you will gain yourself if you are praying him. But this definitely, this is not the concept of theism, because for theism, if you pray, if you are in union with God, definitely you are, I mean, God is showing some mercy, giving some compassion, some blessing. But for Kierkegaard, God's blessing is not there. So therefore, he has been criticized by theistic theologians. But despite all these critiques, his views are very influential for redefining prayer as an act of inner change. Sometimes if you, I mean, think in a very neutral way, prayer mostly is an act of inner change, humility, ethical renewal, and existential commitment. And this also finds parallel with, if you see, Buddhism or Jainism in Indian philosophy, because there also there is no God. So as far as those philosophies are concerned, there also prayer, or even their the Eight Noble Path and other things, they basically are a meaning, I mean, are a way to have inner change and other things. So now basically today we I will end here, because today we have completed 4 subtopics. In next class we will try to take other 4 5 which are left, because uh, having very long classes also is not going to help. I think 30 40 minutes class is quite good to understand. So balance 4 5 topics we will be taking up in next class of existentialism, and there we will complete existentialism, and subsequently we will take up other topics also, maybe of Western philosophy or other philosophical. You can write in the comments also what topics you want me to take, what questions you want me to take, so that I can take it up. So thank you for joining the class today. Thank you.